You know, this whole idea that politics is just an entertainment show for you, right? Oh, it's like reality TV. No. He's a reality TV star and he's now playing the role of the president.
Like a Trump-Kamala debate might even outsell a Taylor Swift concert, dude.
Prediction.
For the US election?
Yeah.
I think that...
Welcome everyone to another episode of the Overcorrection. Guru and I in Goa this week where he works. What is our right-wing conservative government doing?
Enable partners in a queer relationship to be treated as a part of the same household for the purpose of a ration card.
Pass a law saying that gay marriage is now legal. Look, the courts can't make new laws. They can strike down unconstitutional ones that have been made.
The idea is that you're not doing as much. It's never been a moral objection to this. It's the idea that we're not as divided as we are, but the US perhaps is different.
Kamala Harris came out as a gun nut, I guess. If someone breaks into my house,
They're getting shot.
100% are calculated. Immigration is another really big issue.
What she's lucky with is that she has someone who's as much of an idiot as Trump on the other side, who's saying things about like...
They're eating the dogs.
They're eating the cats.
Clearly he has a very fragile ego. Like apparently Kamala puts on a fake accent when she's talking to black people and like...
You better thank unions for that 5-day work week. You better thank a union member for sick leave. You better...
Welcome everyone to another episode of the Overcorrection. Guru and I in Goa this week where he works.
Yeah, it's great to be here here at Creator Studio Goa.
Yeah.
Right?
Man, Goa's a crazy city. So in the morning, the liquor stores actually open before the chemist. Yeah.
Yeah, Goa has its priorities right in many aspects.
Speaking of getting priorities right, what is our right-wing conservative government doing? Passing and spending so much time issuing directives to help empower the queer community.
Yeah, I think, this goes to something that we've spoken about so much on this podcast, and it's the idea that we have gone ahead and imposed a dichotomy or a political framework that is entirely Western in its concept, right? What falls into the left and what falls into the right abroad does not necessarily apply in India. And the recent directives based on multiple consultations held by the Ministry of Social Welfare and Justice and then the interim actions taken all point towards actions, and I'll read them out.
Yeah.
You will not believe that comes from, again, a right-wing nationalist government, even though that's the word that's constantly used to describe it. Right?
Yeah. And what's great is that, they could have issued directives saying that we're going to set up a committee, we're going to do this, we want to do this. But in the meanwhile, they pass interim orders.
Correct. Yeah. So, and it's been methodological, which has been the impressive thing, right? So there were specific directives from the Supreme Court, after which there were multiple rounds of consultations, following which there's been a interim action note that has been released.
I wanted to get into some of these because it really shows how many actionable steps we're taking. So let's just read out some of them.
Yeah. So, for example, I think they broadly covered something as specific as a specific department, say Department of Food and Public Distribution, which is massive in India, right? Our public distribution system. They have actually issued advisories to all states that enable partners in a queer relationship to be treated as a part of the same household for the purpose of a ration card. Again, this is something massive. And from what I know, not in even America, which we turn to again as the holy grail of being progressive in a lot of issues. And when you constantly read articles labeling even our government as a certain way, the heuristic doesn't match, right? If you keep seeing it through that framework. So that's one, let's say taking rational cards. The second department which was brought in, which was Department of Financial Services, DFS, they issued an advisory that there are no restrictions for persons of the queer community to open a joint bank account and also to nominate a person in a queer relationship as a nominee to receive the balance in the account of the death of the account holder, right? Again,
these are a lot of the benefits people actually like about marriage.
Exactly.
And they're clearly saying that, hey, we may not be in a position right now just to out and out pass a law to allow gay marriage, but hey, we can include these provisions right now. And I think we're making that effort, or the government is making that effort.
And we can even come to that point specifically, but even here, say the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. So now this is the third ministry that has now issued letters to all stakeholders, including all states and union territories. And they've told them to take measures to ensure the rights of the LGBTQI plus community. They even included all the letters and the plus with relation to healthcare, planning awareness activities, prohibition of conversion therapy, which is again massive in a lot of countries in the West, availability of sex reassignment surgery, changes in curricula, provision of teleconsultation, sensitization and training of various levels of staff, right? So very broad but at the same time focused on helping the community, right? And then the other two, which is here, it's the Directorate General of Health Services, issued letters on the subject of ensuring healthcare access and reducing discrimination towards the community. And lastly, even framed guidelines in respect of medical intervention required in infants or children with disorders of sexual differentiation. So intersex, which was actually the big story with the boxer at the Olympics, right? We've always managed the intersex situation very differently. And the ministry is now working on guidelines to address this too. So now the main critique, even with stuff like this, even when we passed, say, the bill on the prohibition of atrocities against Transgenders Act, and a lot of this, the idea is that you're not doing as much, right? People from the community say that they're not doing as much. My friends who are from the community say that that's not enough. Again, fair enough.
Do you think that the courts should just pass a law saying that gay marriage is now legal? I think that's where, when it came up in the Supreme Court,
Correct.
it all stemmed from this, right? And I was speaking to some lawyer friends of mine, and it essentially comes down to this idea that, look, the courts can't make new laws. They can strike down unconstitutional ones that have been made.
Correct. And that is their ambit, right? I think if you had an extremely activist judiciary, at some level it'll reach a point where it's actually infringing upon the democracy, right?
Yeah.
Because the idea is that your elected representatives are the ones that are drawing up the bills. Now, in this case, I actually see guidelines like this as basically leading up to that. So in the Supreme Court case, when the Supreme Court struck this down, the gay marriage case, they basically struck it down with an advisory to the government that they need to take this seriously and come up with a discussion on what the pathway to this will look like.
Correct.
Right? And this seems to be a step in that direction. And as they've always held, I don't think it is for some people it might be. I've never had that moral obligation. It's never been a moral objection to this. It's the idea that in a system like India, in a place so diverse, both in terms of culture, religion, state level cultural differences,
Legal ramifications in amendments that will have to be made if this does pass.
exactly, right? So you have a electorate that's essentially very, very diverse in its needs as well, right? We've historically had a lot of injustice against women, so there's specific laws in place to protect those women, right?
Yep.
So if you then
Conflate marriages, the same, a lot of those laws then get affected.
do they
in
lose
it.
the protections or not, right? What happens in cases of alimony? There's that. And again, this is probably like a whole minefield as far as the law goes, but that's always been the idea, is that can we have a discussion on this in parliament? And I think now that we have a far healthier democracy in that sense, that the BJP's power got checked in the last election, you're going to have that discussion.
And it's clearly happening.
Correct.
So I think what it then ultimately does come down to is that even if the courts were to recognize that, hey, it's your fundamental right to get married to whoever you want. In this case, just like with other fundamental rights, the court could say that, hey, it's not like we're making a new law to say that you can have gay marriage. We are saying that marriage needs to include everyone.
The argument was that we have disparate bills, right? So you could get married under what's called the SMA, which is the Special Marriages Act, right? So if you're getting married under SMA, can there be a provision for gay marriage in that, or should it be a separate act in itself? I think a lot of that will essentially get figured out now, but perhaps a way to this, a pathway to this, and this is what we've spoken about again in the podcast, is something like a universal civil code.
It's called a secular civil code, Puru.
Yeah, sorry, secular civil code. When you have the secular civil code, essentially you get rid of any personal law, right? Personal, religious and or cultural law. So we're all just Indians, and the minute you have that, then a lot of these laws can then feed into that in terms of rights and fundamental rights and access and things like that. So, but why we brought this up is what we said at the start, is that when you read the way, say, a Washington Post or Al Jazeera or New York Times covers the country, right? You know what the first buzzword line will always be, right? And this is not the kind of directive that you'd see coming out of that. So I just would urge the listeners of this show to, again, read from a diversity of sources and really actually read what the work that is being done, read about the actual interim actions that are taking, read about the directives that are given, right? And then form a more evidence-backed opinion.
Yeah.
Right? Rather than just buying into a dichotomy that is not even created by us in India.
Yeah. And you can then, if you're aware of all these steps that this government is taking, you can actually hold them accountable if things don't progress.
Correct. Exactly.
Instead of just saying, this is how you've been all along. No,
Yeah.
be aware of the steps they're taking So a year later, hey, if we've not moved forward on this, make like a more legitimate outcry about how we can go forward, rather than just being, oh, this is how it is and this is how you're always going to be.
Correct. Be more specific in your cynicism.
Yes.
Is the idea.
When people say, we want laws support, okay, let's get into which laws. What can we start with? What can we move on first?
Exactly.
And things like ration cards, healthcare services, these are very actionable items that I found very encouraging.
Yeah. And I think, unfortunately, and again, this is an issue that we always bring up, but social media has done such a disservice, right? To even, and perhaps this is at some level even the government's mistake on not playing that game as well enough to keep its people informed through the channel that most of the people are consuming this. So take like an advisory like this, right? Only I am the idiot that's going on pib.com and seeing what the Public Information Bureau's notices are,
my God.
right? Most people are seeing the reshare of an Instagram post that either will take these words and twist them or take these words and extra promote them, right? So you're never actually reading that primary source, which is something that we've always spoken about.
And I think in general, maybe it's the youth element, but the left has always, I hate that I have to use the word left also right now, but I don't know how else to describe it. But the younger people of younger persuasions, they've just always been more savvy and strong in the social media game. That's changing now.
Yeah, that's slowly starting to change. I think obviously all sides are realizing that the new, platform of that informational war will be fought on like digital content, and I think people are starting to understand that. We spoke about the broadcast bill. I think that's also tied into all of this, right? But I do think one thing is, okay, what are people doing? I'm not even talking about that. I've always held that at some level, you and I have a personal responsibility to educate ourselves if we want to be vocal, right? I know some people who are like, look, I don't really care. I just want to work. I want to do my work, be happy with my family, and that's about it, right? Totally fine. You're fully entitled to that too. But for me, it's like that extremely loud group that I know have never actually sat down and read a full article. Right. And
they made it through 3 swipes on Faye D'Souza's post.
Yeah. And again, like she does such good work. And like you can even watch her long form content.
Yeah.
Right. She does such great work. But no, they won't. Right. So it's like, you're not doing that. Episode 1, you're not doing the necessary due diligence to hold an opinion.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to say is that at some level, advisories like this show us in reality we're not as divided that people want to make us feel like we are.
Jonathan Haidt.
Right? We're not as divided as we are, but the US perhaps is different.
Yes.
Right?
Speaking of a place where we can probably accurately apply the right-left divide, because their policies are always so predictable.
Yeah. You can basically, I think you had sent me some post some time ago where you can like see their opinion on one issue and basically figure out where...
The correlation is... It's reaching causation level. Like it literally, because one opinion is causing the second. So when they say correlation doesn't equate to causation, in this case, literally sometimes because they've been convinced on one opinion, they have to fall into line with all the other opinions. This time though, we saw a crack. So now we're going to get into this US presidential election, the debate.
We're getting close.
How it's going to affect India one way or the other, we definitely want to get into this. But Kamala Harris came out as people are saying gun nut, I guess. I mean, she owns a gun.
She owns a gun. Yeah.
Even that is was so weird for people to hear, even though she's pro background checks, strong background checks, all the checks and balances that need to be placed. People were like, oh my God. But then she went and said something really crazy, which was like, if someone breaks into my house,
I would just,
I'm going to shoot him.
And then she tells Oprah like, oh, I shouldn't have really said that on the show. So
it's 100% a calculated move. I heard someone comment saying that if the left in America can reclaim gun issues, it's like over for
the right. Yeah. But I think again there you're seeing more the outcome of like extreme polarization there, because I have met so many Democrats when I lived there who were very much in favor of like regulated purchase of guns. Which, I mean, in India for us, it's like really crazy because I'm like, why would you ever, like, who am I going to defend myself against here? So it's a different world. If you ask
guys, we're both from Bombay. I know people. If at all you're in Delhi, you don't know what we're talking about right now.
But even then, like on average, you're never like in the US when we would go out somewhere and say you meet someone who's like racist or whatever, there's a legitimate fear that like what if they're packing heat? What if they're carrying a gun? Right? So, but not to get into my say Indian perspective on that, but if I was to place myself in their shoes, I've met a lot of Democrats who are like, no, we're in favor of like just good gun control. Right? The conversation's always been about gun control. Whereas like the Republicans are like, let's just give more guns. So like the good people with guns can beat the bad people with guns. And I mean, they're insane. Clearly they're bought a lot of those opinions by the NRA and things like that. But I think that Kamala tried to at least show that perhaps again, we're not as divided as we are. But I think that's a stretch because I think everything else shows such a pole-to-pole differentiation that's happened there. And there, like Jonathan Haidt says, I would have to agree a lot of it actually on the part of the left where they've gone so far on so many issues that were like too much for a lot of people, even in their own party, that then ended up leaving the party, right? So even now, I'm already worried that Kamala will have a tough time because the left in our own party has been critical about the way, say, Biden and Kamala have handled the war in Gaza.
Yeah.
Right?
Immigration is another really big issue.
Very big. And I think
I think that's the only issue where she's being attacked on hard relentlessly and she doesn't have, a really good answer as to what to say about.
Possibly, but I think what she's lucky with is that she has someone who's as much of an idiot as Trump on the other side who's saying things about like them eating dogs and cats and things
They're eating the dogs.
I mean, it just goes to show there. I'm so happy because I think that she outdid him in that debate.
All she had to do was not get rattled and just give boilerplate responses. And that's all you have to do to beat him in a debate is don't play his game.
Yeah.
Just be because she actually didn't say anything remarkable.
Yeah.
All she did was at one point in the debate, she basically she pricked him, she baited him and he got baited and then that went into that dogs and cats ramble and
exactly.
It was just downhill from there.
Yeah, see, clearly he has a very fragile ego and she managed to just pinch the right nerve and he kind of, self-imploded at some level and just started saying the insane shit that he usually says. And I would hope it showed a lot of people even on the Republican side, which there have always been a lot of really smart, good Republicans I've met who are like, hey, look, we just like, our country and our faith and don't mess with that and we're happy and we believe in the same things that you do. And I think that's totally fair and that's a fair opinion to have. And I hope that maybe she won over some of them. But dude, the sheer amount of misinformation you see in like the US elections is a thing that's crazy, right? Like apparently Kamala puts on a fake accent when she's talking to black people and like taps into that side of her, or then she'd like play the Indian card and then there's like rumors that swirl around about that. So I don't know. It's I hope and I pray that we don't end up in that kind of world.
Yeah. I mean, she is half black and she is half Indian.
Right.
Like if she's reaching out to community and playing that card, I mean, she's using who she is. I mean,
yeah, she's playing politics. That's the same thing that Trump is doing as well.
Yeah.
Right. But I think for me, what the election debate showed is that clearly he is still unfit to be like the leader of the free world. Like I would not trust him. But from the Indian standpoint, you would actually get continuity from like a policy standpoint from either of them. That's the hard truth.
If you had to try to find a point where policy might change because of it.
Policy might change, say if Kamala and the party gave like more airtime to people that have openly been kind of bought in by a certain lobby that is heavily funded by a lot of our neighboring countries, not going to take any names, to basically just stir the pot, stir the communal pot or basically just cause internal dissent, which is good if it's based in truth. But basically, set the cat amongst the pigeons. I think if she gives airtime to people like that, that would threaten it. But this has shown that even at times when India has gone, I think the US-India relationship is so strong. Even just 3 days ago, 4 days ago, they were the Quad together. Just reaffirmed that India-US as a partnership is here to stay, right? Even Zelensky from Ukraine is meeting the Prime Minister, he's met Putin too. But people are sensing maybe even we're kind of starting to pivot more to the US and that standpoint, which is not necessarily bad. I think
Yeah,
it's a good
I think one thing that Jaishankar talks a lot about is that, hey, good diplomacy is options.
Yeah.
It's a good thing that
Yeah.
my relationship with this country can continue as is, whichever way the vote swings.
Yeah, yeah, and what has changed is that we are more outspoken now when people
Criticize us for it.
criticize us for it, and when people play on the double standards, we call it out.
Yeah,
right?
like with Russian oil or
Russian oil we've spoken about, but more recently, which I think this is literally like an SNL skit. You had the Khomeini in Iran put out a statement talking about like whatever atrocities in India. I'm like, dude, you're from Iran. Like, you literally look at the way the women are living there. It's like under like a hell-like oppression, right? And we called it out actually immediately, right? And the funny thing is our ties with Iran have gone from strength to strength. So what I'm starting to realize is, and this is like America's strength true and true, is they're like the kings of soft power. I've brought that up. They can move, they can get messages out. They know how to put pressure also when they need to. So again, not saying there's some conspiracy theory afoot on the Iran leader's message, but there's always an agenda at play, you know. And I think we saw it kind of in Bangladesh as well.
Speaking of which, Rahul Gandhi went
Yeah,
to the US.
to the US, and again as a
Holy shit.
yeah. But it goes to show, I think like Kapil Komireddy on print wrote like an article just slamming Rahul, and Kapil's not necessarily like been pro-government at all. Like, he's actually been extremely critical of this government, but he was just pointing out that Rahul's meetings there as a leader of opposition just showed how much of an ego and this almost like savior, I think he says like he thinks he's like Siddhartha or Mahatma type complex that he has, because he has gone and met with people, and this is not where in India I think people, because of this government, people like have overused anti-India even to people that are like rightfully critical about the government, but this is like meeting with people who are legit against a lot of the ideals on which this country was founded, right? He's met with someone like Ilhan Omar from the US Congress, who has literally gone to Pakistan occupied Kashmir and met the officials there from Pakistan and spoken about like Kashmir and things like that, when they're literally killing our soldiers by funding terrorism on our border, right? So, but what Kapil pointed out in that article, which I found interesting, is like, it's actually not even malintent probably. It's literally it's the ego is such when you believe that you are entitled to rule in this country just because everyone in your family has. Anyone that is assuaging your ego or placating you, you're willing to meet them. Similarly, talking absolute nonsense. And then you have someone like Gurpatwant Panoon putting out a statement saying that we really agree with the leader of opposition, Rahul. Is that the company you want to keep? Is the question. There, we are not applying that association. People like Ilhan, people like Gurpatwant, people who you know have said the most atrocious things about the country, right? Even the supreme leader from Iran. I ask the people who have these opinions, do you really think that you're aligned with them? Right? They don't have that same idea of this country that you do, right? And I think I don't know what Rahul is playing at. It perhaps shows that we're still quite brittle in that it's unfortunate that this is the leader of opposition we have. Still, as we've said, we're very happy that there is a stronger balance in the government. But I think his meeting just showed that he's really unfit, right?
I think one interesting thing when we were saying like people who need their ego stroked. So like Donald Trump was going to all these other countries and he comments, he's like, I travel, I meet all these other world leaders and you know, they think we're a joke now, and he's attacking Kamala. He's like, dude, that's because of you.
Yeah, that's because of you. Yeah.
Like, you know, they're like, yeah, America's such a joke. They're looking at you in the face and saying it and you don't even get it.
Yeah. But I think when you're so far down that hole, no, like the ego doesn't let you sometimes see the reality that's staring at you in the face.
Oh, and when millions of people are hailing you as a genius, that must like cloud things on top of a already probably the most egotistical person in the world.
Yeah.
He got elected president once. You have to hand it to this guy on some whack level.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like you remember that that time Obama made fun of him
Yeah.
for like claiming he was going to run
Yeah,
around
at
2012.
at like a White House correspondent dinner.
At a White House
They all
correspondence
thought he
dinner.
was a joke.
Seth MacFarlane, when on the roast of Donald Trump,
Yeah.
said that, excuse me, Donald, while I have you here, it's pronounced huge, not huge. And while we're at it, it's pronounced, I am fucking delusional, not I am running for president.
Yeah, right. So a lot of people were like probably licking their wounds when he won that first election, man. I was in the US when it happened. People needed
Yeah.
like mental health days. And
We
stuff
got
like
mental
that.
health days.
Really?
The day after that. And it blew my mind because I had a philosophy class. I'm my 4th year philosophy major student, right?
Yeah.
And a professor of ours sat there. I don't even know what to say. Everyone just sit and just like, what has happened? He's just holding his head and it's like, I don't know what to say. And I was like, hey, this is like a senior philosophy class.
Yeah.
Wouldn't this be a fantastic time to sit and discuss this?
Yeah, or discuss what went wrong or how there are more states in America than California and New York.
Yeah.
That is, half the country realized that the other half exists. That's really what happened, right? That there's a lot of inherent racism, there's a lot of despair, there's a lot of anger, and they managed to tap into that. But that does not, and whether what they attribute that despair and anger to might be factually incorrect, but the grievances are real.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And I think people didn't even realize that because I'm like Berkeley, California, and people are crying, and I'm like, dude, I'm pretty sure in like some elections around the world, like the opposing party was like going and cutting people's hands off so they can't vote. Like your problems are not the same, right? Use some perspective. But I was just gonna say, speaking of, since I missed that part, but speaking about Rahul's visit, something else crazy happened, which again did not get any coverage from a lot of the people that are usually beating the drum of press freedom and things like that. There was a reporter, Rohit Sharma from India Today, who was like assaulted by Rahul's team for asking a question about what happened in Bangladesh, right? So he asked the question to Sam Pitroda, I believe, at this overseas Congress event, and Rahul's staff basically like cornered him, started talking about him, took his phone and made sure he deleted anything he had noted down or taken videos of asking that question.
Politicians now need to wear body cams, guys.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're
Exactly.
never going to know.
But again, this usually does not get as much traction, or this story is really buried. I don't know if you know anyone from the usual cabal that have spoken about this.
Just you.
Yeah, because it's a convenient thing to ignore, And meanwhile, in Bangladesh, I'm not even the Yunus advisory government, because I don't like to say that he's the real leader because he was not elected. Right, that's a fact. He's not elected. You had him.
Neither was Biden.
Who is literally like, he's like released a couple of, or at least one I remember, like pro Al Qaeda sympathizer in Bangladesh, who was clearly in jail for a good reason, and who said some, again, horrendous things about India and very divisive things about the country. And again, when I had these conversations with people, like, look, there's a very real problem about the governance shifting in Bangladesh if it's not happening the right way. People were like, no, citing that one Al Jazeera article, which was then later debunked by everybody else. There's a very real threat to democracy in Bangladesh. But America is like, had a very studied silence and has kind of supported this. So a lot of people are wondering, is there a game at play? Is there a CIA type game at play where they've kind of propped this up? I don't know. I would not buy any of these things until I see a Netflix movie about it 15 years from now, which like unveils the real truth in a Zero Dark 30 vibe. But you can't discount that America knows how to play this game. Like they've that was what I was joking to a friend. People are like, India like try to assassinate, like our intelligence agency tried to assassinate like a Sikh terrorist in Canada. And people are like, dude, that's like the entry-level game. America is like heads of state only. That's who they assassinate. They don't assassinate like the low guys.
Yeah, we'll put him as the head of state and then assassinate him.
Yeah, we'll put him as
but not when he's at that lowly level.
And we'll like crush a perfectly democratic revolt to install a democracy. That's our game. So, I think that, to go to the broader question on like Kamala, Trump, Democrat, Republican, I think as Indians, what I've always held is it's an amazing country that you can learn a lot from. They have so much right. And I think that sometimes in this political discourse, especially from the left, you'll see a lot of people saying like, I hate America, I can't live there just talk to an immigrant who's moved there and how much the opportunity, the freedom that country's offered them, I think it's easy to lose what an incredible country it is.
I think people can only criticize it from where it's falling, not in
Yeah.
absolute terms.
Correct. But from the Indian strategic standpoint, we've always had with them, we need to have a strategic autonomy, right? Can't be fully in bed with them because you can literally never trust them. It is a country that has funded our neighbor and built their military for them, and was supporting them when they conducted a genocide in Bangladesh, right?
Yeah, you can't live with them, but you can't live without them. They're
Yeah.
too big, they control too much. America has set such a precedent for the world going forward that they cannot be ignored. Just like as much as we talk about decoloniality and those ideas, like, look, English is pretty much the world's language right now.
It is a lingua franca.
AI is being coded in it, so it is the future. Wherever you're from, however you want to speak your own language, you're going to have to pretty much code in English.
Yeah.
I mean, AI will figure out its own way around that, where you can code in just your own language and it'll convert that to code in English. But there is this base infrastructure that is so powerful that is being created in this language, and it's valid, and it's important to pay attention to what is going on over there.
Correct. And that's why even as much as we talk about we've gotten in our comments, like, why you guys, if you talk so much about decolonization, why are you doing the podcast in English and this and that? This is also a part of the fabric of the country, and it gives opportunity, it gives access, and it is the identity of many people. Right?
Yeah.
You can't, the same way every person of every religion is a part of India, and they are Indians, and you can't change that.
Yeah, and
right?
unfortunately, there are actually a lot of people like me who, because of how I grew up and my exposure and my personal choices as well, would not be able to take as much away from a full Hindi podcast as I would a full English podcast, because this is the language I think in and I can most effectively communicate and understand. So does that mean we don't spread these ideas to this audience?
Yeah, no, it's just
I think decoloniality needs to be said most to this audience. The people speaking Hindi and consuming Indian content, they don't need to know about this. They're not affected by it. They've escaped whatever it is that I or we were subject to.
Good point. Yeah, and I think that you are seeing that change, right? I think you're having more people engage with these topics, and like what we've always tried to strive for some balance on this, right? Like, take the best of all of these ideas, right? Whether it's like the interactions we spoke about, whether the things that you've read, all the negative things that we've even spoken about of this government, it's all real. But again, be an educated cynicist. Cynicist is a word? Yeah.
It is now.
Be an educated, cynical person.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's more important than anything else, because I think that shows a democracy that takes itself seriously. Right? Because otherwise you'll end up in the US place where it's like, really some of it is juvenile, it's childish, right? Some of the arguments that you see, some of the content that you see coming out, like, it's scary, and I hope we never end up there, because it's dog whistling, it's baiting people into fear.
It also leaves you with no progress. Like, we talk about overcorrecting. You're not supposed to like completely overcorrect the whole time. It's called a dampened oscillation.
Interesting. Okay.
Like, you will oscillate,
Yeah.
but the amplitude of that oscillation will dampen over time. Now in the US, because it's so polarized, it's like, okay, we overturned Roe v. Wade. Okay, we're gonna put it back in.
Yeah.
Okay, it changes again, we'll overturn it again. I was like, this is the whole game. Like, where is the trying to understand and compromise, and not just, okay, if I win by 100,000 votes, the next 4 years are going to be completely like this.
Yeah.
If I lose by 100,000 votes, it'll be completely like this.
Yeah, that's like too much, that you're going to end up doing nothing.
You're going to end up doing nothing.
Yeah, and I think that's why here, the good thing is, I feel like even, let's say, like you've already seen, like, this government's power got severely checked in the last election. Which is good. You're still seeing somewhat of a continuity. I think even if, let's say, they lost in the next election and you had another party, I don't think things like the large-scale food programs that we have, or the infra push that they've started, or the digital, the UPI stack that we have, these things are going, right? All people know that it's helpful, and I think that as long as we have continuity on that, I'm good. But I do think, say, things like the leader of opposition right now, that family, I mean, they've truly believe at some level is their divine right to rule. And I think sometimes that plays out when he goes and says things like this abroad, right? Like, completely going against the sheer amount that the minorities have contributed to the growth of this country, right? He goes and just says crazy things, and he actually faced backlash from both sides for going out there and saying these things. So I think that shows that, again, people are at least wisening up a bit to the fact that he's maybe not like the savior, and we need better candidates to come and challenge, but will they ever give space to those candidates? Will they ever give space to like a Shashi Tharoor? I don't know. They've never given him a shot until now. So I hope that changes, but I do think that, like we've always said, like I'd rather be optimistically critical about the country rather than saying that this is not the place I want to be, because this is the only country I have.
Yeah.
We don't allow dual citizenship, so I don't have a choice.
In terms of optimism, I always remember this quote by Elon Musk where he says, I would rather be optimistic and wrong than pessimistic and right.
Yeah.
So considering you can't really control the outcomes, hope for the best.
Yeah.
This is also something in, it's like yogic lesson in dharma.
Yeah.
Like you're supposed to detach from the outcomes of your actions.
Let not your actions be tied to the fruits of those actions.
Yes, exactly. And that idea is optimistic.
Yeah.
Because whatever it is, I'm just doing this one thing.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think that's a good philosophy to live by.
Yep.
Right? And it's and I hope that, even in the US, they have the healing that needs to happen. I think it's going to get even uglier as we come closer to the elections.
Okay, finally, before we close, prediction.
Prediction for the US election?
Yeah.
I think that the Democrats will still win.
Yeah.
I think that Kamala will win. That's my prediction.
Yeah.
I think that she's done well in the last debate. People are justifiably worried about some of the things that Trump has said. They're also still pretty sexist out there. So at some level, you will have some people that might not vote for her just because she's a woman. People have actually told me this. Like, is this really the right time for the leader of the free world to be a woman? This is an actual quote that someone has said to me in Utah, obviously. But this is something they've said. So there are people that think like that, which is very regressive. So
Well, whatever, guys. It's the time for the leader of the free world to be an Indian.
yeah, I love it.
Start with half.
Exactly. I think that's the best way to end.
I mean,
what's
if
your
I-
prediction?
I literally, like you said, like if I had to look at it objectively,
Yeah.
not going to change policy much. Happy about that. For the world to come to a healthier place, I would really like Kamala to win. I want this dog and pony show that politics has become
Yeah.
to kind of end, and that started with Trump globally.
Yeah.
It led to all these kind of crazy leaders erupting across the
Yeah,
globe.
Yeah.
In every, so many European countries suddenly started having these outlandish leaders.
Yeah.
And I think that was a trend he started. So I kind of want that to dampen down. Kamala certainly seems like the more presidential candidate.
Correct.
It's not going to affect our policy changes at all. Selfishly, as an Indian, then I couldn't care either way. Because she's Indian, I want her to win.
Yeah.
And I might have said, I'm not sure, but this last debate kind of...
Right. Even I was really on the fence.
Yeah, I mean, not on the fence about who I thought should be president, but how the people would vote. But I think enough people on the right have been like, this can't be the guy.
Yeah. In fact, the same reaction you saw after Biden's first debate, I feel like you saw it towards Trump. Like, wow, this guy is like kind of senile and not fully there.
Yeah.
But
Imagine, you know what might be like the most amazing thing now? He drops out like Biden did. And like,
then you have a new
and you get
Republican.
like a new young Republican who's like more measured and balanced. And
It won't happen, man.
Yeah.
The ego is strong. Rahul hasn't dropped out after losing 3 times.
Yeah.
Ego is a powerful thing. So you need someone who really believes that, okay, can I step down? In the end, say what you will about Biden, but people say he didn't want to. He said, no, you know what? I'm going to step down. And they've done a lot of good work. Like my friend from the US who has been a long, a supporter of Biden was like, we had a very frank call because I told him, look, man, I'm reading all this crazy stuff. Is it true? And he's like, look, some of it is true, but actually they've done tremendous amount of work, which is usually the case in any country, right?
do you think he's actually senile?
I do think he is. He's just really old and like he was like slow to the beat.
So then when you're saying he's doing really stuff, as in people in the administration must be doing stuff, have they really just had a senile president for like 4 years?
Well, I think he became more senile over the last few months, actually. I think it was like a steady deterioration, even if you look like
It's
6,
so
7 months
sad.
ago. Yeah, it's sad.
Because that means there are people there who saw someone's losing their mind, and instead of compassionately taking care of that person.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. No, politics has become ugly. Dude, it's like so ugly. It's
Like sometimes you wonder how, like how much pressure is there on Rahul Gandhi to like.
Yeah, I think it's equally unfair. They
Yeah.
like paint him out to. I mean, poor guy was just thrust into it because of
Didn't
his
have a
fam.
choice.
I've always felt until the last one where his like kind of ego has come out. I always felt like he never wanted to do this. It was just kind of put onto him, and now that's like your destiny. But I think it's come at the cost of some tremendous Congress party candidates that never got a shot, right? Who've then obviously switched, changed allegiances, things like that. And I think that's something that they're going to have to reckon with. That's a lot. Something that all the present leaders have spoken about as well. And I hope that changes.
Yeah.
That's the only thing you can hope for. We live on hope.
Yeah, I like this one. Just a positive note to end it on, where Rahul Gandhi, some press op was saying, that he doesn't hate Modi. Sometimes he even, relates to him. He even sympathizes with some of the difficulties he's going through.
Yeah.
And it was just nice to see
nice
him
to
putting
see.
that out.
Yeah.
We know it's all like whatever.
Yeah. And at some level, like that game is, I think, sometimes played out only for the audience.
Yeah.
They
joke like with, this whole idea that politics is just a entertainment show for you, right? So they've said this like in US politics for years, right? And I was like, when it really, when they stopped even hiding it, when Trump got elected, because he professionally, before he was the president of the United States, was a reality TV star.
Yeah, exactly.
And they were like, oh, this is just like a continuation of your previous work. You have such great work experience.
You got eyeballs then, you'll get eyeballs now.
Eyeballs here. And it's reality TV.
Yeah.
How can you he's a reality TV star and he's the president. And people like joke and say, oh, it's like reality TV. No.
Yeah.
He's a reality TV star and he's now playing the role of the president.
Yeah. Like I think like a Trump Kamala debate might even outsell a Taylor Swift concert, dude. Personally. Like they can pull eyeballs.
In fact, that was, only because they're not probably allowed to sell tickets to those things that they had an audience free thing.
Dude,
Otherwise,
America,
it would O2 Arena.
Yeah. You can monetize the crap out of it. Like,
there'd be like logos and stuff on there. Like,
I watched the debate. Like you have an Insta filter at the debate and things like that. But
yeah. And on the flip side, I heard a lot of people saying that when Trump was elected in 2016, that definitively proved that the Illuminati did not exist. Because that was no one's plan.
Yeah, that was no one's pick. Oh, too good. But yeah.
Anyways, we'll see what's happening. We'll cover it more as the stories progress.
The election comes closer. I know we're focusing on India, but...
No, but we got it. This is important. You can't not focus on America. If you start like... overcorrecting and neglecting global politics, like we live in far too globalized the world right now.
You know the famous saying, if America catches a cold, the whole world sneezes. And that's the truth.
All right, let's end on that.
Cheers.
Thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to this channel, man. Like
we're getting close.
We want to go to UP and get paid.
To do this. But it would mean a lot. It kind of puts faith in us to continue doing this, keep reading, staying on top of issues, and we'd love and appreciate the support. So keep the likes coming, keep the shares coming, and hit us in the comments. You agree,
whatever
disagree,
you want
we'd
to
love
talk
to
about.
see it.
Yeah. All right, that's it for now, guys. Thank you. Stay tuned for more episodes.